Hi, I'm Stan Goldstein with Kates-Boylston Publications. Today I'm happy to be joined by Alexandra Jo, the cultural minister at Stone in New Mexico. Let me tell you a little bit about Alexandra. She's also a certified celebrant and first-generation death care professional with over 2 years of experience creating forward-thinking content for the funeral profession. She produces and hosts the Death Care Decoded podcast, which I've listened to. I've always enjoyed that, and writes regularly for industry publications, including us here at Kates-Boylston. She's written for us here at American Cemetery and Cremation magazine. Alexandra also gives continuing education lectures on innovation in the funeral profession at death care conferences around the country. I was fortunate to attend one of her talks in Atlantic City last fall. She discussed the 1918 flu pandemic and what it could be like compared to the COVID-19 pandemic. Very interesting talk. I enjoyed that. So. And reason we're here too, Alexandra will be hosting a webinar with us here at Kates-Boylston on Tuesday, July 26th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, titled 6 Meaningful Cremation Rituals Your Family Will Love. All right, so Alexandra, welcome, and let's start with our first question. What is Parting Stone?
Hi, thanks so much, Stan. So Parting Stone is a death care tech startup. We're based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we offer a complete alternative form of remains to cremated remains after cremation. We call them solidified remains, and families receive back a collection of smooth stones instead of traditional quote unquote ashes or cremains when they choose cremation. And we've been around for about 3 years now and have done over 3,000 solidifications so far, and
Wow.
families seem to love us.
Yeah, it's quite different. I wrote an article about it and really fascinating stuff. So how did it get started? I mean, how did you get involved and how did it get started?
Yeah, so Santa Fe is kind of a small town, and I met our founder and CEO, Justin Crow, through a mutual friend back when Parting Stone was just an idea. And the idea came from Justin's own experience as a family who chose cremation. His grandfather passed away a few years ago and they chose cremation. And then 2 or 3 years later, Justin's mom still hadn't decided what to do with the cremains. I think Justin found them like
Mm,
in a storage area in the garage
mm,
and just really thought that there had to be a better way to continue having a relationship with those remains after cremation. And he has a background in ceramics and got the idea that maybe there's something else we can do with those cremains that make them more comfortable to interact with, more comfortable to touch and hold. And so he got a grant to work with Los Alamos National Labs here in New Mexico and came up with the process for solidifying cremated remains. And it went through many stages in the process, and we finally got to what we have today, which is that complete alternative form of human remains, which is really cool. And then I got involved by staying in touch with Justin throughout that process. And I've always been very death curious. I lost my mom at a very young age. All of my artwork, I'm a trained visual artist. I have an MFA in visual art, and all of my artwork is about ephemerality, loss, grief, death. And so I knew that working at Parting Stone was something that I really wanted to do. And as soon as Justin was ready to hire lab employees, I was like, me, sign me up. And so I got my start, yeah, I got
yeah.
my start in the lab working directly with cremated remains, which actually ended up being a really wonderful and kind of healing process for me in my own grief journey, getting to help others and other families get tangible interaction with their loved ones that I didn't get when my mom passed. So
Mm,
yeah, that's how I joined the company. And then about a year and a half ago, I moved out of the lab and into marketing and content, and have been writing articles, started the podcast, have been giving the lectures,
yeah.
and that's what I do now.
You're everywhere. You do it all. And following up on that, what problems do solidified remains solve for cremation families?
Yeah, they solve a lot of problems for families, actually. One of the main ones is that traditional cremains are very uncomfortable to handle, they're uncomfortable to transport, and they're uncomfortable to have out and around in your home. They have bone fragments, they can blow away in the wind, they can blow in your face when you're trying to scatter them, they're messy, and solidified remains solve all of those problems. We really are a platform for cremation experiences. So we are just kind of a better way for families to handle or to interact with or to scatter or to travel with their loved ones' cremains. So we're trying to solve
Okay.
a lot of problems for that growing number of families in America, that continuously growing number of families in America who choose cremation.
Yeah, and it's quite a different option for them too. They find out.
Mhm.
And let's talk about why a ritual is important for cremation families.
Will you say that one more time?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Why are rituals important for cremation families?
Oh, yeah, for cremation, I mean, rituals are important for anyone going through the grieving process. It really helps you mourn that relationship that has been lost. Ritual helps us acknowledge that the death has happened and accept that the death has happened. Rituals help us move into a grief journey with intention. And we have a lot of very established traditional rituals for families that choose burial. We have the graveside service, we have, the casket viewing, we have the memorial service, we have all of the things that happen ritual wise in those very familiar burial ceremonies that death care professionals have been providing for a very long time. But cremation has only become popular in like the last 40 or 30 or 40 years. And so it's only really had that long, just a couple of decades to develop what traditions are. And burial has had hundreds of years. So it's really important that death care professionals understand that cremation families need those same kinds of rituals that burial families get to move through their grief journey in an intentional way.
Okay. I think you just answered part of my next question there, but we can follow up on it. So, what kind of rituals are possible with solidified remains?
Oh, with solidified remains, it's kind of the sky's the limit as far as rituals go.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, we try and offer a platform for positive experiences with
Mm.
cremation. And really, whatever ritual the family wants is a possibility. So we've seen a lot of families doing destination memorials. So the ritual of gathering families at a specific site, that goes to the very common scattering ritual. That's much easier with solidified remains. I think
Yeah.
everyone has heard of or experienced going to scatter someone's cremains and having to like bring out the X-Acto knife and cut open the plastic bag and open the black box, or like try and figure out the urn. And then if there's wind, there's the blowback situation. And it's very unceremonious to just dump a bag of granular cremains onto the ground somewhere or into water somewhere. And solidified remains offer a more comfortable ritual and ceremony setting for that, where each individual can physically place a stone in a special place, or can keep their stone. That's another ritual that is very possible with solidified remains, is that a lot of families choose to keep the remains. I actually solidified my cat who passed away a couple of years ago, and I keep her downstairs on my dining table and pick her up every time I pass by and give her a little pet. And it's really nice to be able to continue interacting. And that's kind of a daily ritual for me that solidified remains offer, the touching and the holding that traditional cremains just don't. We also see families wanting to share the solidified remains a lot more, and solidified remains make that a lot easier. I think a lot of funeral directors will be very familiar with the process of pouring cremains into a bunch of tiny little urns or Ziploc baggies and spilling them, and it's kind of a mess, you know.
Yeah.
But solidified remains absolutely solve that problem and make that ritual of community grieving and community ritual much more possible for families that are looking for that.
Right. And you mentioned your cat. Parting Stone does pet cremation also, right?
We do, yes. We are for pets and people. My pal on our sales team says that if it had bones and was flame cremated, we can solidify it. So we have
Wow.
done hamsters and chickens and fish, lots of cats and dogs. We've done a portion of a horse, and yeah, lots of people. So.
Interesting. How did you
Mhm.
discover that families were doing these rituals with the solidified remains, like some of that you mentioned?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in our first like 6 months of operation, we were working mostly with funeral director and funeral home partners. And we realized that we were handling all of these sets of cremains and really developing a personal connection to the people that we were serving, but we didn't know their family members. We didn't have a
Mm.
connection, a way to talk to and understand who the person was that we were solidifying and what their journey was. And so we started this experiment putting blank note cards into all of the packages of solidified remains that we sent home to families and just saying, it's been an honor serving you. We invite you to write us back and let us know a little bit about who your person was. And we started receiving notes back in mass. We have about a
Oh,
35-40% write back rate amongst our clients,
wow.
which is really amazing.
That's great.
And yeah, it's really cool. And it really helps us at Parting Stone understand the impact that we're having on families, the positive impact that we're having on families. And it also, a lot of families share what they do with the parting stones with us. They let us know what kind of rituals that they built for themselves. They let us know what kind of memorials they had, what kind of ceremonies that they were interested in, and why they chose parting stone and what it meant to them and what their better experience was. And so we started asking for permission to share some of those thank you notes, and we've drawn a lot of data from interactions and talking to those families. So that's really where a lot of our information is coming from, as well as, my own studies and research in the field with other funeral directors and
Mm.
funeral homes. I have a
Yeah, it's
couple
great
of
to get
thank you
that.
notes to share. I'm going to be
Yeah,
sharing some in the
sure.
webinar, so if I could read some if you don't mind in this little
Sure,
interview.
go ahead. I was just going to say it's always great to get feedback, and you get a lot of feedback. So please
We
go ahead.
do.
Love to hear it.
It's really
Yeah.
great. Okay, so here's one. Um, Great. All right. This one says, thank you very much for the work you've put into creating this wonderful memorial. Michael's daughter is taking a few to leave in Ireland next week, and I'm taking some to one of our places in Acadia National Park in Maine. And so that's an example of someone who's doing a destination memorial. Um, this one, this one is really cool. This one is from a woman named Liz, and she says, I'm an only child, and my dad had no other living relatives that he knew. I hope to take a few of his stones to some of his favorite places that he lived. He was in the Navy for a career, and I want to leave a piece of him in all of his meaningful areas. And
Mm.
then, yeah. So again, like really like taking stones to special places and getting to honor that loved one even after they've departed. It's really special. One
Yeah.
more. This one's
Go
from
ahead.
Kim,
Yeah.
and it says, thank you for taking care of my beloved husband. He was taken after 10 days in the hospital with COVID. I will cherish these stones as I hope to travel again someday and take him with me. So yeah,
Mm.
there's just a whole smattering of of the experiences that families are having with solidified remains, and we're making note of what they're doing. I'm sorry, my cat's visiting the interview.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Making
you're.
note of what making note of what they're doing, and really trying to hone in on those
Mm.
experiences, those positive experiences that families are having with solidified remains.
Right. Right. And my next question is, what are some of the rituals you'll be talking about in the webinar? And I'll plug it again, July 26th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Great. Yeah, in the webinar, I'm going to take a lot of this data from my research and from these notes, and I'm going to distill it down into two main categories of ritual. So we'll be talking about rituals that families can do repeatedly. So it's something that they can revisit and do over and over again throughout their grief journey and, for the rest of their life. And then we're also going to be talking about one-time rituals that are more ceremonial and probably happen closer to the time that like a family receives the cremated remains or right in the closer time to when the death happens. So we'll be going over 6 rituals within those two categories. Things like sharing, things like the destination memorials we've heard so much about, interaction, and then some receiving ceremony rituals for families picking up remains, some things like that.
Awesome, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And what can funeral directors do to help families create better rituals for the grief process?
I mean, learning from our experience at Parting Stone, talk to your families even after they technically stop working with you. Having these notes about what families did, what families are wanting to do, the experiences they're wanting to have, gathering that data is really invaluable. I think also during the memorial planning process, taking the time to really get personal is a really big part of creating meaningful rituals, because every family is so different and unique, and all funeral directors know this. But when we have cookie cutter ritual ideas for every single family, they're going to work for some and they're going to not work for others. So taking a little bit of extra time, and this definitely comes from my celebrant training, understanding that personalization is not a product. Personalization is storytelling. It's allowing the family to participate, and it's ceremony. And, really involving that with your cremation families that come to you for service as much as your burial families, I think is really, really important. So take the time, ask personal questions about the decedent, ask personal questions about the relationship that their loved ones had with them. And I think it'll help people get a better view of how to personalize those rituals in the future.
And final question. I'll give a plug for your Death Care Decoded podcast.
Absolutely.
When it's on, where people can listen to it, how often you do new ones. So tell us a little about that.
Okay, great. So Death Care Decoded is me interviewing forward-thinking death care professionals from across the space. We've had guests ranging from Barbara Kimmis at Cana to Ryan Thogmartin at Disrupt Media and Connecting Directors, to Courtney Gould Miller from MKJ Marketing and Tribute Technologies, to Joelle Simone Anthony, who is a sacred grief practitioner and licensed funeral director, and like Jason Engler, Larry Stewart, some really awesome guests. And I interview them about what they do, what their job is, and where they see the profession going forward. And you can find those podcast episodes on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Overcast, anywhere that podcasts are published. We are basically. Just search Death Care Decoded. And right now I'm publishing an episode every other week or so. I've been traveling to a lot of conferences. In the past 2 months, I've been at my home office for 9 days. All that other time has been spent traveling. So as you can attest to, I'm pretty hard to pin down.
Yeah.
And so luckily I have a little break from conference season. I'll pick back up in the fall. But I'm hoping to do a couple of new interviews at the beginning of July. So you can look for new episodes first week of July or so.
All right. And we know we have you on July 26th with us here at Kates-Boylston for your webinar.
Yes.
It's again titled 6 Meaningful Cremation Rituals Your Families Will Love. And that's at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday, July 26th. You can sign up for it at AmericanFuneralDirector.com. Click on the webinars tab. All right, Alexandra, very nice talking to you as usual. And I'm looking forward to July 26th. That will be great. It's going to be a fun webinar.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Interesting webinar, too. Okay, have the cat join us, too, again. So.
They probably will. I close my office door, but they know how to push it open and usually do join if I'm giving a webinar or a presentation or something. So.
All right.
They're my assistant.
All right. Thanks so much. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.